Thank you for joining us for what should be our final briefing for Hurricane Ian. The tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings have been lifted for Duval County. However, we remain under a coastal flood warning, high surf, and rip current advisory. Effective immediately, we are reopening the beaches to the public. However, as I just mentioned, there is high rip current risk along with a high surf advisory, and you should stay out of the water. In addition, crews finished inspecting the Jacksonville Beach Pier today, and the pier will reopen to the public at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Our 3 beaches mayors are here today, and we'll talk more about this in just a few minutes. Today, we will close our 4 shelters located at La Villa Middle School, Landmark Middle School, and Atlantic Coast High School. This will enable Duval County Public Schools to clean and prep the facilities to reopen to students and staff Monday morning. The Legend Center will also close today as most residents have already returned to their homes. Effective Monday morning at 8 a.m., city offices will reopen to the public and non-essential employees. I want to thank you for your patience while city facilities remain closed so essential staff could respond and work through this storm. I also want to thank city employees, first responders, and contractors for dedication and hard work throughout this storm that they've done so many times. I deeply appreciate your commitment to this city and your commitment to our people. Yesterday, we experienced record levels of water in parts of the St. Johns River. Record levels. Yet sections of areas that would normally be devastated by this had only minor impacts. This is due to heavy investments in infrastructure, pump stations, bulkheads, reinforcement of sand dunes at the beaches, and other crucial improvements. Pension reform allowed these considerable financial investments in infrastructure improvements around the city. The Jobs for Jacks legislation will allow us to continue that work. Today, we stand here knowing those were the right decisions. Without these changes, yesterday and today could have been a much different story. And understand, elections are coming up, and some that are on the ballot voted against and have taken stands against these efforts. I will continue to do what it takes to protect citizens, their homes, and businesses throughout the city of Jacksonville. And let me clarify here a little more. The areas where we have used funds I just mentioned to make these improvements were spared significant amounts of flooding. Right now, there are areas still slated to undergo the same reinforcements, and unfortunately, they are at risk of flooding in this afternoon's high tide. To those residents and business owners, I want you to know you are top of mind. These enhancements are ongoing, and you can expect improvements to begin within the next 180 days. Before we move on to the beaches mayors, for further comments, I want to remind you that garbage, recycling, and yard waste pickup will return to normal Monday morning. The landfill will remain closed until that time. With that, I'd like to welcome Mayor Hoffman from Jacksonville Beach.
Thank you, Mayor Curry. On behalf of Mayor Glasser and Mayor Brown from Atlantic and Neptune Beach, I just wanted to thank everyone involved in working through this emergency situation out at the beaches, including Beaches Energy, JEA, our Public Works Department, our police departments, and JFRD, and everyone else who worked around the clock for the past few days to help prevent any additional damage and to keep our residents safe. Our hearts go out to those who have been impacted by this storm. We were largely spared, but we know there's many in Florida that are going to face great issues in the coming days, months, and years. First of all, to the dunes, we did have a lot of storm surge activity out there, but the dunes did their job. But right now they're very fragile, and we need to really take care to let them recover. Everybody needs to stay off the dunes, and they need to stay away from the dunes. They're fragile on top, and then where the escarpments, which are the cliffs that were formed from the storm surge, they can be about 5 to 10 feet high. So it may look fun to play around and in and under, but those are going to be very dangerous areas. So please stay completely away from the top or even around the dunes. We lost about 25% of our dune system, so it's going to take some time to recover. So we need everyone's help in doing that. Stay out of the water. The surf is up. The riptides are strong, and it is very dangerous out there. There is no safe way to get into the ocean right now, so please don't go anywhere near the water. And lastly, I'd like to thank our citizens. The beach's citizens did a great job listening, paying attention, staying informed, and we really appreciate that. We asked them to stay off the roads and to stay informed as the situation was rapidly changing, and they did that. So I thank them very much, and thank the county for keeping us informed as well through the emergency operations here in Jacksonville.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll take questions at this time.
Is there any plan to build the dunes back up after the damage that was done?
Actually, Public Works.
Yes.
Steve Long, Public Works. Ma'am, there's a ongoing renourishment project that occurs every so often, and right now in association with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, that project is actually slated to start late next year, and so that will be occurring on a regular schedule. But also we're going to be contacting the Army Corps of Engineers to ask them to look at it based on the current condition from the storm to see if something would cause it to be escalated, moved up quicker.
I'd like to say something. Can I speak to that? With the Duval County Shore Protection Project, we were fortunate to have our last renourishment, and thank you to the City of Jacksonville and our partners on that, to have our last renourishment after Hurricane Irma. The dunes were extremely healthy. We had a lot of sand, and so we really benefited from that. So even though we've lost a quarter of them, they are still doing their jobs, and there's still a lot of dune out there.
Mayor Curry, yesterday you said that we need to maintain vigilance along the river through potentially Sunday morning. Is that still the case, or are we in the clear?
Is Alex up here? Yes, please, come up. It's my advisor.
Yes and no. Today is going to be the peak of it, but we're going to see a gradual decrease. But the coastal flood warning is going to mean that we're going to see minor to moderate flooding continuing through the next high tide cycles through the weekend. But that's going to gradually go down from today. And the reason that is all that water that is in the upper part of the basin south of us is going to drain in that rain, all that heavy rain that fell over Central Florida, and it's going to flow through Jacksonville. So that's why it's going to be prolonged.
And then Mayor Curry, are there any makeup days for garbage and recycling?
No, we'll start on regular schedule on Monday.
A couple of things. First, on the beach dunes, you just said that they're dangerous right now. So if you're not going to do any repairs for a while, they're going to remain dangerous for how long? I know. Yeah.
So thanks for that question. We have seen this before, and right now they really look like cliffs. But over the period of the coming weeks, we'll see those sort of even out a little bit. We do want kids to stay off of them because they're inviting to play on, but they will start to rebuild pretty quickly. And we have seen this before. We just want to educate people about the risk.
It's a natural.
It will be starting today. It is a natural thing, but again, we'll be looking at the next renourishment on the cycle of the Shore Protection Project.
Mayor Curry, you had talked about the projects that the city was involved with. I was out this morning again. I went out to McCoy's Creek. There was no flooding out there. It was kind of surprising, and there hasn't been since they've redone everything out there. You've taken criticism a lot for spending on that. We've heard that from the candidates and whatever. But I was also out at Springfield Park, and it's still flooding like crazy out there. There's lots of problems there, as well as the South Shore neighborhood. So are those the areas that you're talking about that you said today are going to be problems for this week?
Well, I'll let Steve address here in a minute the CIP projects, and if we need to reassess some of that stuff, we will, given even what we've seen in this storm. But I think it's really important that people understand how important elections are. We have made investments in infrastructure, investments that spared us some flooding in this storm. Could have been much worse. There are people that are on the ballot in the spring that voted against these projects. And have taken a stand against it. Now, voters just ought to educate themselves on the policies that people stand for. And Steve, I'll let you address the specific.
Thank you. When you talk about Hogan's Creek, if you look through Mayor Curry's budget that was just passed a couple days ago, you'll see that there is a project in there. It's still a couple years away, but it's a Hogan's Creek project that will be the start of a major improvement that's going to occur throughout the length of it. So that will help address the Hogan's Creek issue. And then there are other projects that were funded in the CIP that are closer in nature that will be starting in relatively quick time. You heard the mayor earlier say 180 days on some of them, like we have one that'll be kicking off in San Marco and that sort of thing, so that we'll be bringing on new drainage improvements to help the city as a whole deal with situations like this.
But you really believe that everything that's done the bulkhead improvements that we've seen, they worked?
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
saying-
They absolutely helped. And look, you have people that voted against these projects that go out and praise these projects when they want to get media attention. I just think voters ought to know that we've made significant investments to make our city safer, more resilient, and understand where the candidates are on these issues and then what their history is.
When it comes to picking up yard waste, a lot of folks have branches down, that kind of thing. Is that going to be handled generally by Waste Management Advanced Disposal, or are you bringing in the contractor to do that?
Steve, I'll let you come up.
Yes, ma'am. At the current time, the plan is to use our regular yard waste contractors. Been riding the city, doing assessment since late yesterday through the evening and early into this morning. And based on the volume of debris we're seeing out there, it appears that it can be handled through our regular contracts.
Chief Powers,
Yeah.
I know you.
Mayor, I'll-
Sorry, Jim, really quick, just to speak to the beaches, since we're all on separate yard waste contracts, but the beaches are the same. We have assessed the amount of debris out in the yards and roads and everything like that, and we know that these debris management companies need to be in other parts of Florida. They need it a lot more than we do, so we are going to continue to use our existing contracts in terms of yard waste. So our citizens should dispose of yard waste the same way that they already have been doing.
I was just going to ask, you have crews now down, for Chief Powers, you have crews now down in South Florida. Have you heard, what are they doing? Are they going door to door helping with rescues? What's happening down there?
So we have two separate teams that are down there. We have an emergency road access task force that is down there, and we have Florida Task Force 5, our urban search and rescue team. The urban search and rescue team are doing the door-to-door searches, making sure that people are out of their homes, not trapped in their homes. And the ERAT teams, emergency road access teams that are part of that task force, are going in ahead of those USAR teams, not only our USAR team, but Florida Task Force 1, Florida Task Force 2, Virginia 1, those are federal teams. They're going ahead of them and opening up the road so they can get into those hardest hit areas at a quicker pace than they normally have been able to do before.
Have you heard if they've made any rescues or anything that has happened with them?
I haven't heard of specific rescues that the task force has made. I have heard of rescues that the group of task forces have made, but not specifically to Task Force 5. But I do know that like our ERAT task force that's down there, yesterday they opened up 7 miles of a road to get those task forces closer to the coast so they can get to those barrier islands that are out there and begin the search and rescue process out there.
Similar question for Mr. Stowe. I know JEA is standing by here, and you've had crews even come in here. But is JEA involved? Are you moving down south at all to help there?
Yeah, so first of all, we're going to remain focused on our area. We've still got about 3,000 people without power, or a little less than that now. And so our crews are continuing to focus here. Excited about the fact that we did all of this safely with partnership with the other groups. We will, once we are completely comfortable that things are in a good place here, then we will work with the other mutual aid associations. The same people that helped bring people to us to help, we will go assist. That will probably be somewhere in Southwest Florida, and we'll do that. We'll be assessing that later today and tomorrow.
So it could be next week or sometime.
It could be as early as later today or tomorrow. We will respond, because our partnership is important. Just like Chief talked about, it's in order to help. Mayor talked about the idea that other places might need more help than we do right now, and so we're ready to go help.
Any more questions?
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate everything you guys have done through the storm.